Hi, I'm Diane Brady, Assistant Managing Editor at Forbes, and this is Forbes Newsroom. And I am with my colleague, Zach Everson, as always in the Beltway. Zach, I feel like we should always just start with the word Trump. How's it going in the Trump world right now? Still lots of news.
It sounds like it's going well for his businesses, at least, and his campaign coffers, or his PAC, I should say. Recently, we got an exclusive that his Make America Great Again super PAC is hosting a $100,000 a person, not even a couple, a person candlelight dinner at Bedminster in September, like mid-September. So this is going to raise money for his super PAC, and it's also going to raise money ostensibly for Bedminster, because you got to figure, that he's charging the super PAC something. So, if you do want to golf with the president, there is the opportunity to do that. It'll cost you more money, though.
Well, I mean, this is a tried and true formula, but who are the people who typically, is it the usual suspects that will, basically can be relied on to pay $100,000, whether they get a sandwich or, fine dining? Who would you anticipate is going to be at that dinner?
Yeah, you'll find some big name Republican donors, I'm sure, some of Trump's supporters. There's also people who may get an invite despite maybe donating a little bit less than that. Maybe they've been a long time donor and they're not in for 100,000. But one of the things we've seen with Trump and just how easy it is to get access to him with money. We had an article last year, I guess, about a guy who stands accused of embezzling money. And shortly after those allegations, he funneled hundreds of thousands of dollars to Republican causes and got pictures of himself with Kevin McCarthy and all these other people. So, we don't know. I not to give away what I'm going to do, but apparently I am going to do just what I said I wouldn't do. But I will, check on social media after that event and see who's posting pictures and see if we can identify who's there. It's a good way to find out before FEC filings are due, which wouldn't tell us for another month or so.
Well, the Scottish side of me feels like I have to stick for a minute with the $100,000 dinner because I'm just curious about the trends. The same way we saw speaker fees really go up in the Clinton era. If you wanted to have a former president come and talk, the price tag went up. It does feel like the average ticket cost for some of these donor dinners is much higher. I mean, I seem to recall 50,000 used to get you a long way. Is this the new baseline, or is this highly unusual to pay that much?
This is unusual. It's not unique. We have seen that price get hit a few other times, but campaigns keep costing more money. Their advertising goes up. It just keeps spiraling upwards. And there's not a candidate in America who wouldn't be hosting this meal if they could get the backers, whether it's any Democrat, a town meeting member in some rural Massachusetts community, anybody would be hosting this to raise campaign money if they could get the people to show up.
And it does not to anyone feel premature given some of the legal difficulties as to whether President Trump would be running again. This is completely what everyone's expecting, is that the coffers must now be filled up again in anticipation of a run.
Yeah, keep on keeping on. I mean, there's no reason to pause any of this stuff. Trump has proved himself repeatedly to be a master at playing out the legal system. So, even if it was a worst case scenario for him and charges were brought, I mean, the odds of anything being settled before the election, 2024, I just don't see it. So, yeah, just keep raising. And hey, money's power. He's able to donate that to some other campaigns, although he really hasn't donated all that much, which has been a concern of other Republican candidates, that Trump's sucking in all the money and he's not sharing it. But that's Donald Trump. They knew what they were getting involved with. So, we'll see. It'd be interesting to see who does show up there.
Well, and give me some sense as to, I know you do, I call it the Trump tally. That is, in terms of the legal challenges that the former president is facing, where are we this week? What's on your radar? I know things are percolating along for the most part, but any changes there?
The big one's what's going on in Fulton County.
Right.
There are 36 current cases and investigations involving Trump, and that's the one that we really saw some movement on, with Giuliani testifying, and now Lindsey Graham was going to have to testify, but then he appealed. and the judge put a stay on that order requiring him to testify, but they have a very short briefing order for him to explain to the judge why he doesn't want to do it. So we'll probably see some progress in that in the next couple of weeks.
In terms of what, being here in New York City, what we've seen, any indications in your mind as to what might happen in the midterms, or just generally some of the signals that you're getting out there right now besides Trump? I know that all eyes do go to him, but other names occasionally come up, and it's good to talk about them in the case that they may actually be the ones who are the leaders.
Yeah, in terms of the midterms, I don't. The Republicans, I think, are going to take the House. It's just they have a structural advantage with redistricting. I don't see that changing at all. One of the things that's come out recently, though, is that a lot more Democrats have registered since Roe v. Wade got tossed, and I think that will stymie that wave a little bit. And there's also the enthusiasm gap, and this isn't just with Republicans. This happens once Democrats kind of get what they want, they're going to back off a little bit, and you're seeing the Democrats a little bit more fired up this cycle, especially after Roe v. Wade.
So tell us what else is on your radar right now. You've got,
I know, attention to Jeff Fortenberry, who was a member of Congress. He resigned in the end of March after he was convicted of 3 felonies. And, for most people out there, pardon?
I said, as one does, the third felony does you in.
For most people out there, if we were convicted of a felony, it would be pretty hard to get that next job. It might be something we'd want to just kind of sweep under the rug. And if they ask, what happened to your last employer, rather than saying, oh, I resigned in disgrace, you'd just be like, I kind of grew out of that position a little bit, and, it's fine. He had a very public felony conviction and resignation, and yet 4 days after resigning from Congress, he had started a new job. So we're taking a look at that. It's with a company that he owns some shares in. It's a privately held company. Just really interesting how quickly he was able to get a job coming out of Congress, and interested to see what his responsibilities are going to be, if he's going to be doing any sort of lobbying or advocacy on behalf of that company on the Capitol.
It does feel a bit like the zeitgeist has shifted, whether it is President Trump, whether it's just the general, tone of conversation and polarization. But I'm old enough to remember Gary Hart, that being a problem, somebody sitting on your lap, essentially. And now we are in a situation where you can have 3 felonies and life is good. You can have multiple court cases, life is good. Is this really, at the risk of sounding obvious, do you think that the mindset has changed around that moral compass or that moral gauge we used to use and judge politicians by?
Absolutely. And I too am old enough to remember Gary Hart, and
congratulations to both of them.
Correct. We've seen this changing over time. All of a sudden, Bill Clinton, remember, it was a big deal whether or not he had inhaled, which is just a ridiculous line to draw. But then there were rumors that George W. Bush had dabbled in drug use. There was Obama's admitted. So we've seen that kind of shift, what you can get away with. And then, Trump came and just obliterated all of that, because he's got, again, 36 active cases, no felony convictions, but has this whole history of problems that would have prevented anybody else previously from getting into office, and not an issue. Look at Matt Gaetz down in Florida. He's dealing with some pretty serious accusations, and he just won his primary yesterday.
One other thing, because I think that any business leaders, it's still, the economy stupid, so to speak. We've seen some positive signals, mixed signals on the political front. What are people latching on to right now that you think is starting to bubble up? Because, I think the whole recession talk does seem to be fading somewhat into the background. When I talk to CEOs, you talk to a different crowd.
Yeah, you're just not seeing a lot of these big trends from the summer. You're not seeing that. Gas prices, formula. Those are problems that have largely been taken out of the news. They've seemed to have been addressed, not completely, but they are better. And that's part of the problem with being getting rid of a problem, you don't really get all that much credit for it. Being able to say, hey, I'm the president and gas prices spiked, but then I brought them back down to normal. It's great that you did that, but it's not something that's going to get you that much attention because the response is obviously they shouldn't have spiked in the first place.
Necessary, but not sufficient, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it's one of those things where the president gets credit for things that he doesn't do, and he gets blames for things he's not responsible for. It's just kind of the issue of being the leader.
Great. Zach Everson, thank you very much.
My pleasure.